My mom said the flights for the big family trip were $2,500 each, and if I couldn't afford it, I should just stay behind. I nodded and swallowed my pride. But a few hours later, my phone buzzed with a credit card alert for 4 business class tickets I never bought. I disputed the charges, locked my account, and when my furious father showed up at my apartment to confront me, I was already long gone. Let me back up and explain how I got to this point. My name is Emma, and I'm 28 years old. I work as an accountant at a small firm downtown. It's not the most exciting job in the world, but it pays well enough, and I've always been good with numbers. More importantly, I've always been good with money. I learned early that if I wanted anything in life, I'd have to earn it myself and manage it carefully. Growing up, I was what you might call the responsible one in my family. My parents, Linda and Robert, never quite figured out how to handle their finances. They lived paycheck to paycheck, not because they didn't earn enough, but because they spent every penny that came in, and then some. My dad worked in sales, and my mom was a receptionist at a dental office. Together, they made decent money, but you'd never know it from the constant crisis mode they lived in. My older brother Mark was cut from the same cloth. He's 31 now, married to Sarah, who might actually be worse with money than he is. They both work full-time jobs, Mark as a warehouse supervisor and Sarah as a hairstylist. But somehow they're always broke. They lease cars they can't afford, buy the latest phones every year, and eat out almost every night because cooking at home is too much work. I remember being 16 and having saved up $300 from my part-time job at the mall. It took me months of folding clothes and dealing with rude customers to save that money. I was planning to buy myself a used laptop for school. Then one day, my mom came to me in tears. The electricity was going to be shut off if they didn't pay the bill immediately. She promised she'd pay me back the next week. That was 12 years ago. I never saw that money again, and I had to keep using the ancient family computer that crashed every time I tried to type a paper. That was just the beginning. When I was 18 and heading to college, I'd managed to save $2,000 for books and supplies. My brother needed it for a business opportunity that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. When I was 21, I'd saved up for a spring break trip with my friends. My dad needed it to fix his car so he could get to work. When I was 23 and fresh out of college, I'd finally saved enough for a security deposit on my own apartment. My parents needed it for their mortgage payment. Every single time, it was an emergency. Every single time, they promised to pay me back. And every single time, I never saw a cent. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was how they acted afterward. There was never any real gratitude, just an expectation that I would always be there to bail them out. They'd make little jokes about me being the banker of the family, as if my hard work and sacrifice were just part of my role. Meanwhile, I watched them spend money on things they didn't need. My mom would come home with shopping bags from the mall while telling me she couldn't afford to pay me back yet. My dad would upgrade his phone while claiming he was too broke to help with my student loans. Mark and Sarah would post photos from expensive restaurants on social media while asking me to lend them gas money. I learned to say no sometimes, but it always came with a price. They'd call me selfish, remind me that's family, guilt me about having a stable job while they were struggling. The few times I held firm, they'd ice me out for weeks, making family gatherings awkward and tense until I finally gave in just to keep the peace. By the time I turned 25, I'd developed a system. I had a main checking account for bills and daily expenses, a savings account they didn't know about, and a credit card I used for emergencies only. I automated my savings so money would disappear from my checking account before I could be guilted into giving it away. I started lying about my salary, telling them I made less than I did. I hated being dishonest, but it was the only way I could protect myself and still maintain a relationship with my family. The thing is, I wasn't living some luxurious life. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that I'd bought used and paid off myself. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in an okay neighborhood. I cooked most of my meals at home, bringing lunch to work in containers I'd wash and reuse. I shopped sales, used coupons, and had maybe 3 nice outfits for special occasions. Every dollar I saved was earmarked for something important like paying off my student loans faster or saving for a down payment on a small condo. I had a 5-year plan. By 30, I wanted to own my own place, even if it was just a tiny condo. By 35, I wanted to be completely debt-free. By 40, I wanted to have enough saved to maybe take a real vacation, something I'd never been able to do. These weren't crazy dreams. They were modest, achievable goals that I was slowly but steadily working toward. Then came the phone call about the family trip. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I'd just gotten home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was heating up leftover pasta when my phone rang. It was my mom. "Emma, honey, I have the most exciting news," she said, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "What's going on?" I asked, stirring my pasta in the microwave. "Your father and I are planning a big family trip for our 30th anniversary. We're all going to Hawaii for a week in June." My stomach dropped. I knew where this was heading. "That sounds nice, Mom," I said carefully. "It's going to be amazing." We found this beautiful resort on Maui. It has 3 pools, 5 restaurants, and it's right on the beach. Mark and Sarah are so excited. We're going to have such a wonderful time together as a family. "How much is it?" I asked, already dreading the answer. There was a pause. I could practically hear her choosing her words. "Well, the flights are about $2,500 each, and then the resort is running a special $2,500 just for flights," I interrupted. "I know it sounds like a lot, sweetie, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Your father and I have been married for 30 years. We deserve to celebrate properly." I wanted to ask how they were affording this, when just last month they'd asked me for $500 to fix their water heater. But I already knew the answer. They'd probably put it all on credit cards and worry about it later. Or they were expecting me to help pay for it somehow. "Mom, I don't have that kind of money for a vacation right now," I said. "Oh, Emma, don't be so negative. You have a good job. I'm sure you can figure it out. I'm trying to pay off my student loans and save for a condo. I can't just drop thousands of dollars on a trip." Her tone shifted, becoming cooler. "Your brother and Sarah aren't making excuses. They understand the importance of family. Mark and Sarah are always broke. How are they affording this? They're making it work because they care about being there for this special occasion. But if you can't afford it, if your little job doesn't pay enough, then I guess you'll just have to miss out." The condescension in her voice when she said, "little job," made my jaw clench. I made more than she did, and I certainly managed my money better, but somehow I was always the one who was treated like I was failing. "It's not about my job, Mom. It's about priorities. I'm trying to build a future." "Well, I guess your future is more important than your family. That's fine, Emma. We'll just go without you. I'm sure we'll have a wonderful time. And we'll send you pictures so you can see what you missed." The guilt trip was in full swing now. "Don't worry about us," she continued. "We'll manage to celebrate 30 years of marriage without our daughter there. I'm sure your father will understand why you can't make it. He'll be disappointed, of course, but he'll understand that your money is more important to you than we are." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that formed whenever she did this. Part of me wanted to cave, to figure out a way to make it work, just to avoid the months of passive-aggressive comments that would follow. But a bigger part of me was just tired. "I'm sorry, Mom." I just can't swing it right now." There was a long silence. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment, "I suppose that's that then. We'll miss you, Emma. It won't be the same without the whole family there, but we'll try to have fun anyway." "Mom, please don't. I have to go. I need to call the travel agent and let them know it will only be 4 of us. Goodbye, Emma." She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood in my kitchen, holding my phone, feeling that familiar mix of guilt, anger, and sadness. My pasta had gone cold in the microwave. I wasn't hungry anymore anyway. I tried to go about my evening normally. I reheated the pasta and forced myself to eat it while watching TV. But I couldn't focus on the show. My mind kept replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every tone. Was I being selfish? Was I putting money before family? No, I told myself. I was being responsible. I was trying to build a stable life, something my parents had never managed to do. But the doubt crept in anyway. Maybe I could make it work. Maybe I could pick up some overtime at work or do some freelance bookkeeping on the side. Maybe I could put it on my credit card and pay it off over time. Even as I thought it, I knew it was a terrible idea. It would set back all my plans by at least a year. I went to bed that night feeling unsettled. I kept checking my phone, expecting a follow-up guilt trip from my dad or my brother, but nothing came. Maybe they were giving me the silent treatment, I thought. It wouldn't be the first time. The next morning, I went to work and tried to put the whole thing out of my mind. I had a big project due at the end of the week, and I needed to focus. But throughout the day, I found myself thinking about the trip. Hawaii. I'd never been anywhere tropical. The farthest I'd ever traveled was a road trip to the next state over for a friend's wedding. I wondered what it would be like to walk on a beach in Maui, to swim in the ocean, to eat fresh pineapple and watch the sunset over the water. Then, I'd remind myself that experiences like that were for people who didn't have student loans, who didn't need to save every penny for a down payment, who had families that didn't treat them like ATMs. By lunch, I'd managed to mostly put it out of my mind. I was eating my turkey sandwich at my desk, going over spreadsheets when my phone buzzed. For a second, my heart jumped, thinking it might be my mom apologizing or my dad trying to smooth things over. But it wasn't a text or a call. It was a notification from my credit card app. Large purchase alert, $19,847 at Hawaiian Airlines. I stared at the notification, confused. There had to be some mistake. I hadn't bought anything from Hawaiian Airlines. I hadn't bought anything for nearly $20,000. That was more than I'd ever spent on anything in my entire life. My hands were shaking as I opened the app and logged in. There it was, at the top of my transaction list. Hawaiian Airlines, $19,847, pending. My first thought was that my card had been stolen. Someone had gotten my information and was using it to buy plane tickets. I needed to call the credit card company immediately. But then something made me pause. Hawaiian Airlines, the same airline my parents would be using for their anniversary trip. The timing was too coincidental. No, I thought. Even they wouldn't go that far. I clicked on the transaction to see more details. The purchase was for 4 first-class tickets from our city to Maui, departing in June. 4 tickets? My parents, Mark and Sarah? The room seemed to spin around me. They hadn't just excluded me from the trip because I couldn't afford it. They had used my credit card to upgrade themselves to first class? The $2,500 coach tickets my mom had mentioned? That had been a complete lie to make me feel too poor to come along. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone screen, trying to process what had happened. My family had stolen from me. Not borrowed, not asked, stolen. They had somehow gotten my credit card information and used it to buy almost $20,000 worth of airline tickets without my permission. How did they even get my card number? Then I remembered. Last month, when they needed money for the water heater, I'd given them my credit card to order a part online because their cards were all maxed out. My mom had called me at work, crying about how they'd have no hot water, and I'd recited the number over the phone. They must have written it down. The betrayal hit me in waves. First, the financial violation. $20,000. That was more than half my savings. Years of sacrifice and careful planning. Second, the deception. They'd made me feel guilty about not being able to afford coach tickets while planning to fly first class on my dime. Third, the sheer audacity. They thought they could do this, and I would just accept it, maybe complain a little, but ultimately let it go, like I always did. But what hurt the most was the lack of respect. They saw me not as their daughter, not as a person with my own dreams and goals, but as a resource to be exploited. All those years of helping them, of being the responsible one, of sacrificing my wants for their needs, and this was what it had led to. They didn't love me, they loved what I could provide for them. I stood up from my desk, told my boss I was feeling sick, and left work early. I needed to handle this immediately. On the drive home, I called the credit card company's fraud department. My voice was steady as I explained the situation. I see a charge for nearly $20,000 from Hawaiian Airlines that I did not authorize, I said. I'm very sorry to hear that, the representative said. Can you confirm that you did not make this purchase and did not give anyone permission to use your card for this purchase? That's correct. This is fraud. Did you share your card information with anyone recently? I hesitated for a moment, then said, I gave my card number to my mother last month for a small purchase. She must have saved the information and used it without my permission. I see. We'll need to dispute this charge and investigate. In the meantime, I strongly recommend we cancel this card and issue you a new one. Yes, please do that immediately. The new card will arrive in 7 to 10 business days. The current card will be deactivated as soon as we end this call. The merchant will be notified that the payment has been disputed and reversed. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. After handling the credit card situation, I drove home and sat in my apartment, thinking about what would happen next. The airline would notify whoever bought the tickets that the payment had been reversed, the tickets would be canceled, my family would know immediately that I disputed the charge. They would call me, they would text me, and when I didn't answer, they would come here. I made a decision. I wasn't going to be here for that confrontation. I wasn't going to let them bang on my door, yell at me, guilt me, and manipulate me into backing down. Not this time. I packed a bag with enough clothes for a few days, grabbed my laptop and chargers, and made sure all my windows were locked. Then I called my friend Jessica. Hey, can I stay with you for a few days? I asked. Of course. Is everything okay? Family drama. I'll explain when I get there. Before leaving, I had one more thing to do. I pulled up my doorbell camera app on my phone and made sure it was working properly. If anyone came to my door, I'd know about it. As I drove to Jessica's house, my phone started buzzing. First, a text from my mom. Emma, something strange happened with the airline. They're saying there's a problem with the payment. Can you call me? I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another text. Emma, this is urgent. Please call me back. Then a call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. A text from Mark. What did you do? Our tickets are showing as canceled. Another call from my mom. Another voicemail. By the time I reached Jessica's house, I had 12 missed calls and 23 text messages. I silenced my phone and went inside. Jessica lived in a small but cozy townhouse about 30 minutes from my apartment. She'd been my friend since college and knew all about my family situation. She didn't even seem surprised when I told her what had happened. $20,000? She said, pouring me a glass of wine. They really thought you just let that go? Apparently. They probably figured I'd complain, but eventually pay it off like I always do with everything else. But not this time. Not this time, I confirmed. We ordered Chinese food and watched movies, and for a little while, I was able to push the situation out of my mind. But my phone kept lighting up with notifications, even on silent. The calls and texts were becoming more frequent and more frantic. Around 9 o'clock, I finally checked the messages. They had evolved from confusion to anger from my mom. "Emma, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to fix this immediately. You're ruining our anniversary trip." From my dad, "Call me back now. This is unacceptable." From Mark, "You're seriously going to ruin mom and dad's 30th anniversary because you're petty about not being invited? Grow up." From Sarah, "I can't believe how selfish you're being. This trip means everything to your parents." The irony of them calling me selfish after stealing $20,000 from me was not lost on me. Then came the voicemails. I put in my earbuds and listened to them in Jessica's guest room. My mom's first voicemail was confused, almost pleasant. "Hi, honey. There seems to be some mix-up with the airline. Give me a call when you get this." The second was more concerned. "Emma, we really need to sort this out quickly. The airline is saying the payment was reversed." By the third, she was angry. "Emma Marie, I know what you did. You canceled the payment out of spite. How could you do this to us?" My dad's voicemail was worse. "Emma, I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. You're going to call that credit card company and tell them it was a misunderstanding. We're your parents. We've done everything for you, and this is how you repay us. By sabotaging our anniversary trip. You fix this, or we're going to have a serious problem." Mark's was dismissive and cruel. "Really, Emma? You're that jealous that you couldn't come? Maybe if you weren't so uptight about money all the time, you could afford to have some fun, but instead, you have to ruin it for everyone else. You're pathetic." I turned off my phone after that. I didn't need to hear anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my doorbell camera. My stomach knotted as I opened the app. It was my father. The timestamp showed he'd arrived at my apartment at 7:30 in the morning. In the video, he was banging on my door with his fist. "Emma, open this door right now," he yelled. His face was red with anger. "I know you're in there." He kept banging for several minutes, then pulled out his phone and called someone. I could hear his side of the conversation. "She's not answering the door. No, her car's not here. She's probably hiding at one of her friends' places. This is ridiculous. She needs to fix this today, or I'm going to—" He didn't finish the threat, but he didn't need to. I knew my father's temper. I'd seen him scream at customer service representatives, at waiters who got his order wrong, at anyone who crossed him. The only reason he'd never directed that anger at me was because I'd always been the one who gave in, who kept the peace, who fixed things. He stayed at my door for another 20 minutes, alternating between banging, yelling, and calling my phone. Finally, one of my neighbors must have threatened to call the police because he left. But not before kicking my door and yelling, "This isn't over!" I sat on Jessica's couch, watching the video, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief that I wasn't there. Relief that I'd stood up for myself. Relief that I'd finally drawn a line they couldn't cross. But I also knew this was far from over. They weren't going to give up easily. The trip was supposed to be in 3 months, and they'd probably already requested time off work, told all their friends about their fancy Hawaiian vacation, and spent money they didn't have on resort reservations and activities. Sure enough, the attempts to contact me continued throughout the day. The texts became longer, more manipulative. From my mom, "Emma, I'm trying to understand why you're doing this. Is it because I said you couldn't afford the trip? I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but this isn't the way to handle it. You're hurting the entire family. Your father hasn't been able to eat. He's so upset. Mark and Sarah saved for months for this trip. Please, just talk to me. We can work this out. Don't let your pride destroy our family. From Mark. Sarah's crying. She was so looking forward to this trip. We were going to try to start a family afterward, but now we can't even afford the fertility treatments we planned because we spent our savings on the resort booking. I hope you're happy. Ugh, I wanted to scream at the manipulation. Mark and Sarah trying for a baby, they could barely take care of themselves. And if they'd spent their savings on a resort booking for a trip they were planning to put on my credit card, that was their own stupidity. By the afternoon, they'd figured out I wasn't at my apartment. The texts became more threatening. From my dad, "We know you're reading these. Stop acting like a child and face us. You think you can just hide forever? We're your family. You owe us basic respect. What you've done is theft. You stole from us by canceling that payment. We could report you to the police for fraud." The mental gymnastics required to accuse me of theft when they had stolen my credit card information was astounding. From my mom, "Emma, please, I'm begging you. Your father is talking about disowning you. Is that what you want? To lose your family over money? Money isn't more important than family. Please come home and talk to us." That evening, they tried a different tactic. They sent my Aunt Patricia, my mom's sister, after me. Patricia had always been the mediator in the family, the one who smoothed things over. Her texts were gentler but still missed the point entirely. "Emma, sweetie, I heard about what's happening. Your mom is devastated. I know things got out of hand, but canceling their trip isn't the answer. They're getting older, and who knows how many more anniversaries they'll have. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive them?" Family forgives family. I didn't respond to her either. That night, Jessica and I talked about what I should do next. "You need to document everything," she said. She was a paralegal and always thought in terms of evidence and protection. Save all these texts and voicemails. Download the doorbell footage of your dad. If they try to escalate this, you'll need proof of harassment. "You think they'd actually try to take legal action?" I asked. "I think people who are willing to steal $20,000 from their daughter are capable of anything. You need to protect yourself." She was right. I spent the evening backing up everything: screenshots of texts, downloads of voicemails, the doorbell camera footage, and, most importantly, the credit card statement showing the fraudulent charge. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Anger in the morning, manipulation by afternoon, guilt and threats by evening. They cycled through every emotion, every tactic they'd ever used on me. But for the first time in my life, I didn't respond to any of it. My mom even tried showing up at my work, but I'd warned security, and they didn't let her pass the lobby. She made a scene, apparently, crying and telling anyone who would listen that her daughter had abandoned her family. My boss called me into his office to make sure everything was okay. I gave him a brief explanation, and he was surprisingly supportive, even offering to let me work from home for a while if needed. On the fourth day, I decided it was time to respond. Not with a phone call or a text, but with a carefully crafted email that I sent to all of them: my parents, Mark, and Sarah. I CC'd my Aunt Patricia too, since she'd inserted herself into the situation. The email read, "I am writing this email to formally address the recent situation regarding the fraudulent charges made to my credit card. On March 15th, 4 first-class airline tickets to Hawaii totaling $19,847 were purchased using my credit card without my knowledge or consent. This was fraud. Plain and simple, the fact that it was committed by my own family makes it worse, not better. Mom, you told me the tickets were $2,500 each for coach seats, making me feel like I was too poor to afford the family vacation. In reality, you had already stolen my credit card information and planned to use it to purchase first-class tickets at nearly $5,000 each. This wasn't just theft. It was a cruel deception designed to exclude me while using my money to fund your luxury vacation. The charges have been disputed with the credit card company and reversed. This is not negotiable. I will not be paying for your vacation, in whole or in part. Any further attempts to coerce, guilt, or threaten me into changing this decision will be considered harassment. Dad, your appearance at my apartment, where you banged on my door and yelled threats, was captured on camera. If you come to my home again, I will file a restraining order. This is not about money. This is about respect, boundaries, and the pattern of financial exploitation that has characterized our relationship for over a decade. I have repeatedly bailed you out of financial crises, lent money that was never repaid, and sacrificed my own goals to support your needs. This ended the moment you committed fraud against me. I am taking a break from this family. Do not contact me. Do not come to my home. Do not come to my workplace. I need time to evaluate whether I want to maintain any relationship with people who would steal from me and then try to gaslight me into believing I'm the one in the wrong. If you choose to respect this boundary, we may be able to rebuild some form of relationship in the future. If you continue to harass me, that door will close permanently. Emma, I sent the email and then blocked all their numbers and social media accounts. The silence that followed was both peaceful and unsettling. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't on call for their emergencies, wasn't anxiously checking my phone for their latest crisis, wasn't mentally calculating how much I could afford to give them this month. I stayed with Jessica for another 2 days, then returned to my apartment. There were several pieces of mail shoved under my door, all letters from my family. I threw them away unopened. There were also signs that someone had tried to pick my lock, scratches around the keyhole that hadn't been there before. I had the locks changed the next day and installed an additional deadbolt. The first week of silence was the hardest. Despite everything, I felt guilty. I kept thinking about my mom's tears, my dad's anger, Mark's accusation. Had I overreacted? Was I being too harsh? Then I'd remember the $20,000 they tried to steal, the lies about the ticket prices, the years of financial abuse, and I'd know I'd done the right thing. Jessica helped me through it, reminding me that feeling guilty was normal when you'd been conditioned your whole life to put others' needs first. My therapist, who I'd started seeing years ago but hadn't told about the full extent of my family's behavior, was shocked when I finally opened up about everything. Emma, she said, what you're describing is financial abuse. Your family has been financially abusing you for years, and it escalated to outright theft. You have every right to protect yourself. 2 weeks after the email, I got a letter at work, sent through certified mail. It was from a lawyer. My heart pounded as I opened it, expecting some kind of legal threat from my family, but it wasn't. It was from my parents' bankruptcy attorney informing me that they were filing for bankruptcy and listing me as a creditor for various loans totaling $35,000. I actually laughed. They were trying to claim that all the money I'd given them over the years were loans that they were now discharging in bankruptcy. It was meaningless, of course. I'd never have been able to collect anyway, since there had never been any written agreements. But the fact that they'd gone to the trouble of doing it felt like one final insult. I forwarded the letter to Jessica, who confirmed it was essentially meaningless, but recommended I keep it for my records. It's actually good that they did this, she said. It's legal documentation that they owed you money. If they ever try to come after you again, you can show that they're the ones who owed you, not the other way around. A month passed, then 2. The silence stretched on, and slowly I began to adjust to it. I focused on work, spent time with friends, and even started dating someone, a guy named David who worked at a coffee shop I frequented. He was kind, responsible with money, and had a healthy relationship with his family. Being around him and his family showed me what normal looked like. 3 months after the incident, right around the time the Hawaii trip would have happened, I got a call from my Aunt Patricia. I'd never blocked her number, though I hadn't responded to her texts. "Emma," she said when I answered, "I'm not calling to guilt you or to mediate. I'm calling to tell you that you were right." I was speechless. "Your parents came to me last week asking for money," she continued. "They said they needed $10,000 for a new roof. But I did some checking and there's nothing wrong with their roof. They wanted the money to book a different vacation because the Hawaii trip fell through. When I confronted them about it, they admitted they'd been planning to use your credit card all along. They said you could afford it and that you owed them for raising you." "I'm sorry they tried to scam you too," I said. "They've been doing it to everyone, apparently. Your cousin found out they'd taken out credit cards in his name years ago. Your grandmother discovered they'd been taking money from her accounts. It's all coming out now." "What's going to happen?" I asked. "I don't know, but I wanted you to know that you did the right thing. You were the first one to stand up to them, and that gave the rest of us the courage to look closer at what's been happening. I'm sorry I didn't support you from the beginning." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and cried for the first time since this all started. Not tears of sadness, but of relief and validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I hadn't overreacted. They were who I'd always known them to be. I'd just finally stopped enabling it. 6 months have passed now since the credit card incident. I haven't spoken to my parents or Mark. I heard through Patricia that they're still together, still broke, still blaming everyone else for their problems. Mark and Sarah apparently separated, their relationship unable to survive the stress of their financial situation. My parents told everyone who would listen that I'd ruined their anniversary and destroyed the family. But most people had heard enough versions of the story by now to know the truth. I continued therapy, working through the guilt and learning to set boundaries. I was promoted at work, partly because I was able to focus better without the constant family drama. David and I became official, and he's been incredibly supportive through everything. I even managed to save enough for a down payment on a small condo, which I'll be closing on next month. Sometimes, late at night, I think about my family. I wonder if my parents ever feel genuine remorse for what they did. Or if they've convinced themselves they were the victims. I wonder if Mark ever realizes how much I sacrificed for him over the years. I wonder if they think about me at all, or if I've just become another person who wronged them in their narrative of perpetual victimhood. But mostly, I don't think about them. I've built a life without their chaos, their manipulation, their endless needs. I have friends who respect me, a partner who treats me as an equal, and a future that I'm building on my own terms. The credit card they tried to steal from me has long since been replaced. The $20,000 they tried to take remained safely in my accounts. The family trip they planned at my expense never happened. And the daughter they thought would always be their safety net, she's gone, replaced by someone who knows her worth and won't accept anything less than respect. They didn't just try to steal money from me, they tried to steal my future, my dreams, my self-worth. But here's the thing about theft. It only works if the person you're stealing from doesn't fight back. And after years of letting them take from me, I finally fought back. I won. The other day, David asked me if I ever thought about reconciling with them. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "They're not my family anymore," I said. "Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't lie to you. Family doesn't try to destroy your dreams to fund their own pleasures. They're just people I used to know. And that's the truth. They're just people I used to know. People who taught me valuable lessons about boundaries, self-respect, and the difference between real love and manipulation. I'm grateful for those lessons. even if they came at such a high price. My real family now consists of the friends who supported me, the therapist who helped me heal, the partner who loves me for who I am, and, most importantly, myself. I'm my own family now, and I protect her fiercely. To anyone listening to this who's in a similar situation, who's being financially abused or manipulated by family members, know this: you deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve to have your hard work honored, not exploited. And sometimes, the only way to get that respect is to walk away from people who refuse to give it. It's not easy. The guilt can be overwhelming. The fear of being alone, of losing your family, can keep you trapped for years. But I promise you, there's peace on the other side. There's freedom in not having to check your bank account with anxiety every time your phone rings. There's joy in watching your savings grow without fear that someone will guilt you into giving it away. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments below.